consumer of maximum 3 kilowatt connection, then the maximum capacity of solar PV which you can install at your rooftop under net metering is 3 kilowatt only. You cannot go beyond that. Likewise, if you are a 5 kilowatt consumer, then you can install only maximum 5 kilowatt capacity. You cannot go beyond that. But there is an upper cap to this also. Although this is not practical now, there is an upper cap that is 2 megawatt. But of course, there is no residential or agricultural consumer who is having 2 megawatt capacity. So this is coming from the earlier policy also. So basically, if you are installing a net metered rooftop solar plant in your house, the maximum capacity which you can adopt is only equal to your sanctioned load. So now what we'll do a quick exercise and let us see, are we able to examine the benefits, or are we able to calculate the cost involved and benefits and all that. So let us do a simple exercise. So suppose you are a consumer of your sanctioned load. Your sanctioned load is 5 kilowatt. Let us say. And you intend to install a net metered grid connected SPV. We can say GCSPV, grid connected solar power plant of 3 kilowatt, let us say, in your house. And the cost I have discussed on the last during the last talk also, 40,000 per kilowatt you can take as the cost. Suppose your tariff, that is per unit charge, is 6 rupees per unit, let us say. So let us try to do a rough calculation that tentatively what will be your ROI in how much time, how many months or years your investment will be returned. For this you will need this number which I had shared earlier also, that per kilowatt per day generation of your solar plants is taken as 4.5 to 5. So you can take it 5 on a higher side for, let us say, 4.5 to 5 units it is. So you have a sanctioned load of 5 kilowatt, which you are paying per unit charge as rupees 6. You are installing a 3 kilowatt solar power plant grid connected, and its cost is 40,000 per kilowatt. For the time being, for first step of calculation, we are not taking into account the export. We are considering that whatever the plant will generate, will consume that. Now, so I want everyone to try this exercise and see what does your calculation say, and send your answer in the comment section to me. What does your calculation says about the ROI? So if you take 5 units per kilowatt per day, that means a 3 kilowatt plant will generate 15 units per day. And you have studied the functioning of a grid connected plant. So you know if 15 units are generated by a grid connected solar PV plant, then 15 units you are not going to withdraw from the grid. So that is the idea. So if you calculate it, so 15 units into per unit charge 6, so 90 rupees per day you are saving. And 90 into 30, that means you are saving 2,700. And if you multiply that by 12, so that is around 30,000. And your total investment is 40,000 into 3. So investment is 1.20 lakhs. So that gives you ROI of about 4 years. Okay. Now, somebody may say that my tariff is not that high. I am getting electricity at 5 rupees per unit. So if you use 5 instead of 6 here, then what will happen? Your ROI will slightly increase. Somebody may say that I have a school and my tariff is on a higher side, say 7 rupees or 8 rupees. Then what will happen? Your ROI will reduce. It will be less than 4 years then. May happen that some places you are not having that good sunlight hours or the number of sunny days is slightly less. So average units generated per kilowatt is not 5. You are saying it is 4. It is coming 4 for some area. Then of course the ROI will slightly increase. But you will see if you take many permutation combinations, you will realize that the ROI in general is somewhere 3 years to 7 years, 6 years or 7 years or so. Now, for the same case which we have considered and which we have calculated, if I take into account the export also in this case, if at some time the load is less in the house and the excess electricity is exported to the grid, then obviously you see here that will be credited, that will be added to your credit and your ROI will further reduce. So that is how net metering makes it beneficial. For example, in most of the houses, what happens during the daytime, it may happen that people have gone to schools and offices and the load is less during the daytime as compared to the evening hours. So what is happening during the day? It may happen that your system, your plant is exporting the electricity, and effectively during the night, with the units which you are withdrawing are being balanced out by some of the units which you have export in the daytime. That is why I said yesterday that in this configuration you are using the plant, you are using the grid as the battery. When you require, you are withdrawing the electricity. When you do not require, you have surplus, you are exporting and saving electricity into it. So that is the idea. So this is how a net metering system works. I'll show uh, this I am showing This is the electricity bill of one of our buildings. Now, you need to understand that we are an educational institution, and right now in the present system, educational institutions are not allowed to have net metered system. But this plant we had installed before this policy came, when the net metering was open for all type of categories. So it is a detailed bill only. What I am trying to show is this. If you look here, it is 3747, 3047, 3747 KWHE. This E is representing the export component. So this is the bill of month of August for one of our hostels. So this is showing the number of units. These many units have been sent to the grid, and the this second row is showing the import basically. So this is the export, this is the import. So the effective billing is on the basis of, you see here, the number of units is only you have seen thousands, 4,000 and 3,000. The effective billing is only on these many units, that is 570, because what has been done, import minus export is giving the bill. The bill is calculated on the net. That is why it is called net metering system. So the same way we can have for our houses. I would advise you all, after this talk, you can have a look on your electricity bill of your office or your house, and you see what is the monthly units consumption, and based on that you try to design a solar power capacity for your house, which you believe will be the optimum capacity, keeping in mind the maximum limit is your connected load, sanctioned load. So sanctioned load is mentioned in the bills, like here it is mentioned connected load is this. So this was an example of from our university, one of our hostels. And I'm sure many of you have calculated the ROI and you have understood how we can analyze the power generation from a solar plant, and how we can devise an optimal capacity for our house or our office. Now I move on to the second type of metering, which is called gross metering. So gross metering is uh, entirely different from net metering. This is the definition of gross metering. When you export total power generated to the grid, whatever your plant is generating, if you export completely to the grid, no part of that is utilized by your house, then it is called gross metering. So what happens? You export the power to the grid, and grid pays you at at a rate which is um, agreed agreed upon based on some priori agreement between the power corporation and the consumer. So this is entirely different from a net metered system. So what I am saying is, in this case, instead of this 5 kilowatt being fed here in the house, it will be fed directly to the grid, and no part of it is consumed in the house. So how the customer is benefiting? The customer is benefited through the payment received from the power corporation. But I would mention here that this gross metering system is not in common use now. It was there when the government was pushing for solar plant. There was a starting point in the country. Now, most of the states have stopped this system. They are going for net metered system. So gross metering generally is not there, but there is a scheme, Kusum scheme, which I had discussed yesterday also, in which the farmers can install solar plant up to 2 megawatt on barren lands on their fields, and the electricity generated will be purchased by the power corporation. So in that we have this system, but otherwise for other consumers this is not applicable now. This is utilized by those countries or in that phase of development when you want to popularize the technology. For example, sometimes back Sri Lanka was paying the solar PV installer twice or thrice the rate on which they were selling electricity to the consumer. What I am trying to say, I am again come here. So in that case, this 2 kilowatt in gross metering will be export completely to the grid, and this 3 kilowatt which the house requires will be withdrawn from the grid. Now suppose the tariff, that is the per unit rate on which you are purchasing electricity from the power corporation, is say 6 rupees per unit. Then gross metering system, if you are offering say 18 rupees per unit, so that is a clear cut incentive for people to install solar plants at their houses. So that is what I am discussing about the example of Sri Lanka. On the other hand, as the technology is being adopted on a wider scale, then of course there is government is not planning to have large number of gross metered system. So in Australia has a very good deployment of solar PV. So now what they are doing, the rate at which they are paying for solar units is less as compared to the rate at which they are selling electricity to the consumer. So all type of examples are there depending upon what is the status of technology deployment in a country and what are the priorities. So net metering one concept, gross metering the other concept. Now I come to the third part. This is called zero energy export. Why I am discussing it? You need to understand. Suppose you are not a residential consumer, or you are not, and you are not an agriculture consumer. Suppose you are a school or a college or a university, and you want to install a solar plant. Now, solar energy, there is a variation in the generation of solar energy. Uh, it is available during daytime. It is not available during the night time. Then there is variation in load also. For example, in the university, during the summer vacation, most of the hostels are vacant, so the load reduces. During months of May, the load is very high. During the months of November, the load is relatively very low. So when you design the solar plant for any place, there is always a possibility when your generation may exceed your load. Now the policy is saying that you are not supposed to export the grid, export the excess power to the grid. There are two aspects to that. One is the financial aspect. The power corporation, the government does not want to pay you anymore for export, except for residential and agriculture consumers. The second is technical aspect. The grid operators need to know what is the amount of power, which is maximum power which can come from a particular area to the grid. So because of these issues, now it has been made mandatory that those who are not coming under net metering system, they should install a zero energy export device with their plants. So this is a simple device and economical device. There is no complication and costly. It is not costly also. So what happens? This device you install with your plant, and this device works with the inverter which is already there, and it manages the generation. So if it is seeing that the power may be export to the grid, it will reduce the generation for that time. It will keep on continuously monitoring. When the more generation is required by the local load, it will increase the generation. Otherwise, it will decrease the generation. So it is basically limiting the export to the grid. That is the idea. and now it has been made mandatory for all non-residential and non-agricultural consumers. For example, in the Aligarh smart city, many rooftop of government building offices are being installed with solar plants. But with all these plants, we'll have this zero energy export policy implemented. Zero energy export device will be installed with all these plants. So if you are not a residential or an agricultural consumer, then this you come under zero energy export policy. So this is how we can classify the three possibilities of metering mechanism. One is net metering, which we have discussed in detail, and we are clear now that it is applicable to only two types of consumers. I am talking in the Indian context. Then gross metering, which has played an important role in the adoption of this technology, but it is now not applicable except for some agricultural consumers. And zero export for all other consumers, they need to go with a zero energy export system when they are installing their solar plants. So with this, I'll take a pause here and I'll open for discussion. If you have any questions, please ask. You can one by one you can unmute your mic and you can ask a question. If you want to make any point, you can make your point. If you have any observation, you can share. So we'll have 3 minutes discussion. Then I'll move to the second part of the presentation.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is Dr. Shesha from JNTU Pulivendula, Kadapa district, Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is it implementing by the state government net metering system?
Yes, it is. It comes under your local power corporation, which is under state government.
Okay.
What do you mean by implemented? Means
suppose.
Yes, please.
Yes, our solar power panel produce 5 watts. I mean, we consume our home. I mean, our individual home may consume 3 watts, 3 kilowatts, whatever it may be. So remaining 2 kilowatts enter into the,
grid.
Power station. Yeah, grid.
Yes.
Yes. At that time, if we can consume excess, we are taking from the grid, right?
Yes, that is what exactly that is
like
what
that metering system, public metering system is insisted by any state.
No, I'm. You see what you are clear about the concept. Now coming to the implementation mechanism, the meter and the solar plant, this all has to be purchased by the consumer. Only thing is that you need to take the permission from your local power corporation because metering is involved. So they have only one step. They are involved in the metering part, but installation is your responsibility.
Yeah, installation is our responsibility. Is there possibility? Okay, we will discuss with our local power stations. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
Any other question, please?
Sir, I want to ask a question. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir, I am from chemistry background actually. I am Dr. Urpita Rakshit from West Bengal Government Polytechnic College. I want to ask a question that, sir, let's say you are saying that we can export electricity if it is in excess, generated in excess, okay,
Yes,
in a
yes.
solar PV cell. But sir,
Hmm.
say the electricity generation depends on the weather, in fact, right? So
Hmm.
each day may not the same amount of electricity would be generated.
Of course.
So the same amount of electricity wouldn't be exported to the
No,
grid every day.
definitely. Hmm.
So, sir, there wouldn't be any problem regarding this export to the grid. I'm asking this. I do not know
No,
very much about the
no, no.
electrical engineering, but
I
there is a
understand.
problem about grid failure or anything like this thing that they need not. I mean to say, grid is like a sink, right?
Yes.
But we are exporting electricity, it is getting it, but uh, each day, suppose the same amount of electricity isn't generated. I think that.
I have understood your question. Let me answer.
Hmm,
See, this is exactly the reason why the plant is being connected with the grid. Because whatever variations are there, these variations are absorbed by the grid. You see, power grid is like an ocean. See, no matter how much water you withdraw from that or inject into that, that does not affect it. So that is why exactly what you are saying, because of weather based variations, to take that into account, that is, when generation reduces, grid is providing you. When generation exceeds, grid is taking that excess without any fluctuations, variations into your supply. That is the whole idea. That is the basic reason why grid, it is being connected to the grid. Someone has asked that how much area is required for the installation of 2 kilowatt solar plant. So tentative thumb rule is 100 square feet for 1 kilowatt. 100 square feet for 1 kilowatt. So 2 kilowatt, 200 square feet. That is the tentative thumb rule for it. Any other question or any observation?
Yes, sir. This is Anil Kumar from Mathrusri Engineering College, Hyderabad.
Yes, please.
So, as you said,
I think you should add your area also.
yes,
That
sir.
helps me in framing my answer.
Okay, sir. This is Anil Kumar from Mathrusri Engineering College. My area of subject is electrical engineering, sir.
Okay, fine.
Sir, as you said, for net metering, want to erect a solar PV plant. The restriction is with respect to the capacity of your load. So why it is restricted, sir? If I have 2 kilowatt of load, why it is restricted for the generation with respect to load?
Basically, what happened? You see, when a new thing comes, people are apprehensive related to that. So when did this started that the excess energy will be exported to the grid? So grid operators had some apprehensions that how will manage that excess generation, how will balance the grid, because grid has to be continuously balanced with respect to generation and transmission. So with that background, it was decided to put this restriction. But with practical experience, it has been realized that this restriction is actually not required. But I have mentioned what is the regulatory provision right now. So right now this provision is there. You cannot go beyond the maximum sanctioned load.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other question? One thing I would mention here, that this zero energy export, it it appears that it is a drawback, but actually it is helpful also. You see, there are many consumers who are willing to install, because you cannot compare the capacity of solar power with the sanctioned load capacity, because 5 kilowatt solar power is not equal to your 5 kilowatt from the grid, because it is a season based, time based, weather based resource. So to completely meet your demands, you need to go on a higher side. So zero energy exports basically allows that. because you are not interested in getting any payment from the power grid. Rather, you are interested in completely serving your local load. So you with this zero energy export, you can go beyond your maximum load also. So that limit is only when you are going for a net metering system. Suppose in your house you want to install an 8 kilowatt solar power plant. You have a sanction load of 5 kilowatt. But if you do it with a zero energy export device, there is no issue of that limit. That limit is only for net metering system. So this is benefit of zero energy export policy also.
10 वाली खत्म हो गई, 2-2 रुपए वाली पाल लीजिए.
So any other question? Otherwise, I'll move to the second part of my discussion. So now I'll talk about few things which I could not cover yesterday because of time limit, and which I feel are important for the participants of this FDP. One thing I would like to share, we had talked about the environment. Yes.
Sir, this is Sriram Sharma from Matrushi Engineering College, Hyderabad, sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually we are talking about the solar rooftop
what
system.
is your subject?
Yeah, this is electrical engineering, sir.
Okay.
Now nowadays this parking slots are coming now, sir, with solar charging. The excess charge we have, we can discharge to grid like that. So whatever the area you are covering, will it comes to that category also? EV, electrical vehicles, whatever the excess charge that can be connected to grid.
You can do that. You can do that, but if you are talking about any policy regulation related to that, so that is not there. Means if you are talking of EV charger, excess power generated from an EV charging station going to the grid, so and you are getting paid for that. So to the best of my knowledge, I think there are no regulations for that.
I have some fancy question for you. Like that nowadays, instead of connecting to grid, if you have excess charge, excess power is there, is there any possible to share with our neighbors or community, whatever is there in that? Such type of local grid must be there for that.
You see, this is an interesting area where lot of work is going on, local energy net, and in fact some people are giving the vision of electricity grid working like the internet grid. So that is also there. So use of blockchain is also being proposed for this local exchange of electricity between neighbors payment basis. So this all is going on. This is an area of work, an interesting area of work, where the neighboring people may come into a contract that my excess charge power will be supplied to you for your requirements, and you will pay me on the basis of this agreement. So this is going on. Some cities have already tried and tested at a smaller level. Pilot projects people have done, and blockchain is a technology which is going to play an important role.
Need any permission from the local authorities?
No, I am saying that the permission question will come when you have the feasibility of implementation of that. So it is, since it is still in the research level, or you can say some very few pilot projects level. So of course, when it is successful, then it will come, then policy will come, then regulations will come. So right now it has not reached that level. Fine. So now I'm coming back to what we are discussing related to environment question and the need for sustainable development. So in that connection, I wanted to show this. This is an interesting data. You see, this slide is showing the carbon footprint by nations, different nations around the world. So this is how a rough studies on tentative contribution of carbon footprint throughout the world, different countries. Now, there is an interesting concept of, you see, this Earth overshoot. Basically, this concept has come up in this regard, that the natural resources which the Earth is generating or giving you for 1 year, in how many days of that year you are consuming those resources. So, on the basis of world average, for example, this year 2020, the Earth overshoot day was observed on 22nd August. That means the resources which are there for up to 31st December, you have consumed all these resources on 22nd August. Now, although this year, this day has come a little late, almost 22 days late as compared to the Earth overshoot day in 2019. But the reason behind that is not something very encouraging. The reason is this Corona effect. Because of Corona, this has been delayed by 22 days. Otherwise, this day has been continuously going towards earlier days. Now, what this slide is showing, basically, this is again a study in which they are saying that if the whole world starts living like the country which has been mentioned, then which day will be the Earth overshoot day? So, of course, as you are moving towards this direction, towards December, these are our target dates, and the earlier dates are, of course, we do not want that. But you can observe that the problem is that the countries which are on this side, on the preferred side, are mostly those countries which are not that developed. So that is why you see development and this effect on Earth are related, which we had discussed. So we need to devise ways that the societal development plus conservation of environment can be taken up simultaneously. So the target is that if we push back this Earth overshoot day by roughly 5 days per year, then it is expected that by 2050 we will be able to achieve this parity between yearly resources and consumption of those yearly resources. So this is an important and good concept which has been developed with respect to analyzing the environment question and climate question. Now, coming to the development, now I'll take up one topic which is connecting all these three things: development of the society, the electricity, and the environment question. So, you see, this I call the cool challenge, the cooling challenge. You see, right now, one of the most important requirement throughout the world is the air conditioning, and in that cooling particularly. And I believe this is one of the biggest challenges to the decarbonization process of the electricity grid. So, and there is no doubt that air conditioner has made our lives easier. There is no two ways about that. It has given us better working environment, increased productivity, and for the elderly and children and patients, this has been really helpful. Then this whole internet revolution is running on the and air conditioned atmosphere. So in that way, it is a technology enabler, and in many other technologies also. But it is the most energy intensive appliance. You know it very well. So its demand is growing exponentially. So you see, again, there is a cycle in this. So when you install an AC, because of the growing warming, increasing warming climate, but when you install ACs, you further increase that warming. So you need more ACs. Then those more ACs will further contribute to increase in the warming. So it becomes a cycle again. So now I'm giving you some data to understand how big this challenge is. So it's like estimated that there are 4.6 billion, which is expected to rise to 5.6 billion in 2050. That means 10 new ACs are being added every second for next 30 years. The Indian numbers are also, in 1990, we are estimated to have 2 million ACs. 2019, it became 42 million. 2050, it is expected to become 1144 million. This is how the number is increasing. Consumes a lot of power. Then it creates a heat island. You can experience it when you stand behind the outdoor unit of the AC, or you stand outside a car which the air conditioner is running. So there are studies which show that when some places of the cities where a large number of air conditioners are there, up to 1 degree temperature rise has been observed in those areas compared to other areas. So which simply means that if enough of your neighbors install the AC, you may be forced to do the same. This is one aspect. The second aspect, the release of gases from that is again in itself they are detrimental to the environment. Now the question is, am I saying that am I against the air conditioners? So it is not possible. I am not suggesting that we stop using air conditioners, because that would be putting the clock back. That is not possible, you know it. But what we can do, we can address this question, these two questions, that how we can make it more energy efficient. First thing, how we can make it better for climate in terms of the gases used also. And third is how we can minimize the wastage especially. So these things can be done. Keeping that in mind, the Indian government has formulated a plan that is known as India Cooling Action Plan, ICAP, which was released on 8th March 2019. And it is the first such plan in the world. And it is trying to meet this contradiction that we agree that we need ACs, we need this cooling, but how to minimize the impact on environment. So in this plan, it has been decided, the targets have been set to reduce the requirement and in cooling as well as energy, as well as the technological advancements in 20 years. So threefold approach is being proposed. So first is we try to design such buildings, such areas that the cooling energy requirement is reduced. Then when the requirement is there, we supply through energy efficient appliances. And we know it. There has been continuous improvement. First we had these 3-star ACs, then 5-star ACs. Now we have the inverter ACs. So the improvement is coming, but what is required is a radical improvement. So that is, I believe, this is the most important area, and a lot of work is going on in this area. Plus we need to I believe awareness creation is also very important in this. For example, conveying the importance of going for inverter AC or 5-star conventional AC according to their suitability. People should know where they should install an inverter AC, where they should install a 5-star AC, and they should know that it is better to go for energy efficient ACs only. Then, of course, if not required, do not use that. That is, wastage has to be minimized. Then one simple thing like the operating temperature. I hope some of you have seen these news reports in last year or before last year that government is planning to make it mandatory that air conditioners are designed to run only at a minimum temperature of 24-25 degree, not below that. But that has not been mandatory, rather it is an advisory to run on this. What is the reason? Reason is that these ACs are designed for optimal operation when you use these ACs around this temperature set point. For example, the star rating of ACs, this is valid when you are using it around 24-25 degree temperature. If you are setting it at 16-17 degrees, then that star rating is not valid. So below that, if you go below 24, 23 and then the energy consumption with each degree reduction in temperature setting increases in multiple folds. And plus, I'm sure we all realize that there is this 24, 25, 23, 22. These temperatures are quite comfortable temperatures. And normally we need not go beyond that. One more misconcept generally observed is that you come from somewhere and you want to the room to get cooled quickly. You come and you start running the AC by setting it at 16 degree. But 16 will come only after 17 and 17 will come only after 18, like that. It cannot go directly to 16 degree. So that is these things. If we try to communicate these things, if we create awareness, then it will definitely lead to positive contribution, seeing the large number of ACs we have now, right? And of course, we need to have skilled people, like we have talked about green energy sources. Similarly, for these this energy conservation exercise, also we need to have trained people who are aware about these things. That is also important. So this was about AC, but there is another challenge which need to be kept in mind. Again, related to cooling, that is the fan. So normally we do not talk about fan when we talk about energy conservation and energy efficiency, but because its energy consumption is much less as compared to an AC, that is fine. But you see, the number of fans is much more than the number of ACs. So for every AC, usually you find 3, 4, 5 fans. So that makes it a very important target point for achieving energy efficiency and decarbonizing the system. And in India itself, about 40 million fans are sold every year. And as I have discussed on the yesterday also, as we are increasing electrification to new areas, then of course the number of fans will further increase, and we need to address this. There has been important technological advancements. I am sure you are aware that new fans have come which are supposed to be of 32 watts only. Slightly costly, so we need some. Again, many people are not aware about these fans, so first we need to create the awareness, and then we need to provide some financial support also to the people who are not that financially well off, so that they prefer these fans as compared to the conventional fans. So this is again, because of the number involved, this is again an important area which should be considered. So this is all which I wanted to discuss in this session, and now I am open for questions. If you have any questions, please ask. So Abdul
Sir?
Majid, yes, please.
Yeah, sir. This is Sriyam Sharma, the same person asked. Matrushi Engineering, Hyderabad, sir.
Yes.
Sir, nowadays for the solar-based grid connected system, solar-based system, people are encouraging DC powered utility, whatever the equipment you are using in the household, including fan, refrigerator, AC, etc. Everything operating on the DC would be better power consumption point of view. One way, environmental point of view, that is good. Other way, as you said, usage of this AC, refrigerators, etc., is harmful to nature. So, how to balance these two, sir? If the DC operated refrigerators, etc., will they emit less this greenhouse gases compared to AC operated? Any difference is there?
See, this DC versus AC has a long history, and I'm not denying the utility of DC based appliances, especially for those areas where the grid has not reached or the supply is not reliable. But I believe DC can be a support at the larger transmission levels only. Household level appliances completely based on DC. Right now, I'm not able to see that. I'm not, of course, nobody is sure what will happen after 20, 30 years. But right now, I see this AC grid sustaining with the support of DC transmission links and, of course, the renewable energy sources and all that. But I believe this AC grid system is going to stay mostly, except for like you see in many areas in India where grid has not reached or it is not reliable, then DC appliances, those appliances are basically light and fan. They are being used. Abdul Majid Saab, he has asked about how much money paid to consumer if he export power to grid in units. So as I have said, in India right now, the rate of payment is the same at which you are purchasing the electricity. So what happens, what mechanism we have is that suppose you have in some month your export is more than your, sorry, let me give you one more example. Suppose in a month you have import of 100 units and export of 20 units. So what will happen? Your bill will be generated on 100 minus 20, that is 80 units. So that means your export unit are same as your import unit. But in some months, suppose your export is more than your import. So you will not immediately get the payment. Rather, what will happen? It will be credited to your account, and in the next month of your bill, it will be adjusted from your import units, like that. Then another question related to the cost of solar plant, which I have already discussed many times, but I am again saying that right now tentative cost is 40,000 per kilowatt. Any other question or any observation? So I want to make two important points again. One thing is I see a lot of confusion among participants regarding feedback. So I am again clarifying. The feedback of the program is centralized feedback.